All right, we're doing chapter 4.7. We're going to focus on a couple questions. Most of them are about maximizing area. Let me turn that on. Maximizing area. The last one's going to be about maximizing revenue, and it's really weird. So these questions work the same way. They all have the same word in them. They all talks about maximizing. Okay? Maximizing. Maximum area. When you see that word, it's going to give you a clue about what kind of thing you're trying to do with your parabola. Most of these situations are quadratic, which means there's going to be a parabola representation. You've got to figure out, do I need to know what the x-intercepts are, or do I need to know what the vertex is? If it's saying the word maximum or minimum, right, if it's parabola like that, maximum or minimum means that you need to find the vertex. And you know the way you find the vertex is by completing the square. Okay, that's going to be our process in every single question. But the problem is they haven't given us any equations. So what we need to do is we need to write equations. There's almost always going to be two. So we have, for this question, a rectangular play area is to be surrounded by 120 meters of fence. Okay, so to me, that means that, like, I'm going to draw a picture. I have length on this side, width on these sides. So if I were to add those all up, it would give me 120 as the total. So 120 is equal to 2 length plus 2w. Cool. Now I need to write the maximum area. So I don't actually know what the area is, so I'm just going to write that as an equation. Area equals length times width. Now what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to actually solve for this. So we're going to substitute the two equations into each other. So basically we need to take that first equation right here, and I need to rewrite it and isolate for length or width. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite it here. I'm going to make it, let's make it length. Okay, 2 length is equal to 120 minus 2w. So all I did was I moved that 2w to the other side, right? Made it negative. Now I need to divide everything by 2 so I can isolate the L by itself. So that's going to give me L is equal to 60 minus w. Cool. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take that value and I'm going to subs it in for L in my second equation. So I'm going to write area is equal to 60, and I'm going to use brackets. Be very careful. If you don't, you'll make a mistake because of the distributive property. Cool. So I did that. Now, the next step, when you see this, you should want to do distributive property and rainbow this out. Okay, so I'm going to get A is equal to, I'm going to write it a little nicer, negative w squared plus 60w. Okay, right away you should be saying, hey, that looks like a parabola. I can work with that. So what we're going to do is we're going to complete the square so we can actually graph it and see what the vertex would be. Or we don't have to graph it, but when we complete the square, we'll be able to see what the vertex is and solve the question. So looking at this, I'm going to first factor out that negative at the start. So area is equal to negative w squared minus 60w. Okay, then I'm going to complete the square. So I do it by doing sash. That's how I remember. So half square, add, subtract. Okay, so half of that would be 30. So I'm going to do plus 30 minus 30. Sorry, squared. Okay, so now I can actually complete the square. This will give me w minus 30 squared, and then I need to bring this term out of the bracket, which means I need to multiply it by the negative, so it's going to become positive, and 30 squared is actually 900. Okay, so now that I've done that, I learned two important things. I learned what the x and y value is of the vertex. So the x and y, if I want to just write the vertex so I can remember, it is 30, 900. I have to be very careful so I understand what this means. This is where a lot of students mess up. This number was the x value, which in our case was the width. So that means that ideally the width would be 30 to create the maximum area. So in our rectangle here that I drew, this would be 30, this would be 30. Okay? But this 900 is not the length. And it makes sense because it's almost always going to be a really big number. That is our area. that is the biggest area that we can create. Okay, so if we did our rectangle right here, if we found the actual area, that would be 900 centimeters squared, whatever it is. Okay, in order to find the actual length, which was here, we need to use that equation that we had right at the start. Okay, so we're going to do that. I'm going to zoom out a bit and actually solve it. So I'm going to sub into my equation. So it was it was 120 equals 2L plus 2W. I know what my W is, so I'm going to replace that. So it's going to be 2 times, what do we say, 30 for W. Okay, so 120 is equal to 2L plus 60. When I rearrange, that's going to be 2L is equal to 60. So L is equal to 30. So it's actually the same as the width. Okay, be very careful. Different questions ask for different things. Some questions, like the one we just did, my bad, the one we just did, asked for the dimensions. They said, what are the dimensions? Okay, that means what's the length and width. So in that case, it's 30 and 30. That's what we found. We're good. Some questions ask for the maximum area, which this one also did, in which case you would need that 900 meters squared, whatever. Okay, be very careful what the question's asking for. Sometimes it only asks for one or the other, and you don't have to do as much work. But that's the basics of how to do these questions. Okay, you write two equations, and then you sub one equation into the other. It's going to create a parabola. You complete the square, so you find the vertex, and then using that vertex, you sub in the x and y values depending on what you need to figure out. So this second question works the exact same way. It's a little bit trickier. I'm not going to solve the whole thing. I'm just going to set up the start because the completing the square is a skill you know how to do. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to make my two equations. I'm going to draw a picture just to start. Okay, so this one says a rectangular lot is bordered. So this is like a wall. And then these three sides here are actually being made out of the fence. Okay, so I'm going to label it so it can make some more sense. Length, length, width. So basically what I'm going to say is that it gave us 800 meters of fencing. So the 800 is equal to 2 length plus width. And then the area is still equal to length times width. So now that you have these two equations, the only tricky thing was that it was 2 length plus width instead of 2 length plus 2 width because we're only using one side. Okay, so now that you have that set up, you can do this, you can practice this yourself. Use these two equations, sub into the other, complete the square, and you'll be able to find the answer. Okay, again, this one only asked for the area. It didn't actually ask for the length and width. So once you find the y value of the vertex, you'll have the answer. This one, again, it's the same idea, you just got to label it properly. Okay, so we got length, oops, sorry about that, length, 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 width is all the way across, and width is all the way across. Okay, so basically they said you have this much 450 meters of fencing, and it made those 5 walls. Okay, so I'm going to write my equation. 450 is equal to 3 length plus 2 width. Now it says what's the dimensions for the total maximum area. So again, area is equal to length times width. And again, now we have our two equations. We're going to do the exact same thing we did all the other questions. Rearrange that first one so it's like length equals something, something, something. Sub that into this equation. Solve or do distributive property. Then we're going to complete the square, find the vertex, and that's going to give us our answers. Okay, that's the basics of how to do these area type questions. This one is very different in the sense that we have to set it up differently, but it's the same in the sense that we're going to complete the square and find the vertex. Okay, I'm sorry it's a little bit blurry. The camera was kind of weird. So student parking pass costs $20. If you charge $20, you get 150 people who are going to buy it. If you raise the price, every time you raise the price by $5, 20 fewer students are going to buy it, which makes sense, right? The higher price, you get less demand. What is the price that will maximize the revenue? And again, we want to focus on that word, maximize. Right away, I say I need to find the vertex of a parabola. Okay? So this one actually gave you a clue. Sometimes in the test they won't. I'm going to set this up and I'm going to show you how I usually set these up. Okay, I'm going to write an equation first. Revenue is equal to cost times amount. Okay, this equation makes a lot of sense. If I want to know how much money I make selling cookies, you do the price of one cookie times the number of cookies. That's all we're going to do. So I want to sub in the numbers that I know. I'm just going to call this R for now, okay? The cost was 20. That was the cost. And the amount was 150. Those were like the starting values, okay? But we're going to actually change it. So the price increased by $5 every time. Let me just make that a little nicer to see, okay? Increased by $5 every time. And the amount of people decreased by $20 every time. The problem with what we're looking at right now is there's no actual variable. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to make a variable called x. And x is going to represent, sorry about that. X is going to represent the amount of times the price increases, okay? Or the number of times you increase the price. So think of it this way. If x was equal to 3, that would mean they raised the price 3 times. And remember, every time you raise the price, it's a $5 increase. So really, that would mean that the price is equal to 20 plus 5x, which is the same as, in this case, 35. Okay? Be very careful to understand that when you're doing these revenue questions, x is always equal to the amount of time the price increases. Okay? Now that we have our equation, it's pretty easy to do the rest of the question. Okay? I'm going to do distributive property. It's going to give me a big weird number, but we'll be able to do it. Okay? So let's do our rainbows and actually solve for the rest. All right. So I got 3,000. It's 20 times 150. Okay. And then I got negative 400x. Then we do 5 times 150. Gives me plus 750x. And then do this. So we get minus 100x squared. I'm going to rewrite this a little nicer. So we get r is equal to, the revenue is equal to negative 100x squared. Collect these terms together. Plus 350x plus 3,000. Okay? The next step, like we always do when we're doing these kind of questions, I need to deal with this coefficient. So I'm going to factor the negative 100. So it's just going to be x squared minus, was it 3.5x? Okay, and then this is going to be minus 30. Cool. Okay, I might suggest making this into a fraction. Okay, that might be a little bit easier way to do it, making it 7/2, whatever works better for you. Okay, now that you have this, you will be able to complete the square. Be careful when you're like bringing this out and everything. Okay, you complete the square, and when you complete the square, you're going to find, you're going to be able to find out what the vertex is. So let's look back at the question for a second, see what it was asking. Okay, it wanted you to know, what is the price? What is the price? Oh my gosh. What is the price of a parking pass that will maximize the revenue? So we want to know what the price is. So we got to be very careful, because we're going to find out our answer is going to be x is equal to some small number. Okay? We're going to end up getting something like, at the vertex, x is equal to, I don't know, 3, whatever. We have to be careful that when we get that number, that is not the price. The price is obviously not $3. That means that we raised the price 3 times. So to find the price, you need to take the original money, the original price of 20, and then add 5 times whatever x is. So if it was 3, Okay, I'm not going to complete the square, I'm lazy. But it would be 20 plus 5 times 3, so 35. That would be the price that maximizes the revenue. Okay? That's how you complete these questions. I know this is a long video. We went through all the concepts. That's the basics of it. These questions are worth doing. The ones about the revenue ones, because a lot of times they come up on tests. That's how we do it. That's it.